Red light, come on. Now we are recording. This is our IMEA NNU book study, part 2 on the inner game of music. So we are looking at chapters 4 through 6 this week, or this month, I suppose. So there are the basics of chapter 4, the power of will, chapter 5, the power of letting go, and chapter 6, the power of perspective. A fresh serving of perspective, just like in Ratatouille. So I'll read the little synopsis here of chapter 4.
Please do.
This chapter explores how willpower affects motivation and performance. Green differentiates between forced effort and natural commitment, arguing that pushing too hard often leads to frustration rather than progress. He advocates for a balanced approach where musicians channel their energy efficiently rather than through sheer force. He also introduces the concept of relaxed concentration, where effort is applied in a way that feels natural rather than strained. He also discusses how setting clear intentions rather than focusing on fears or doubts leads to more effective practice and performance. This chapter encourages musicians to align their will with their musical goals in a way that fosters joy and growth. So hopefully we all do that. I mean, it's kind of nice. We're all at different levels. Christina gets to do when they're starting. You take them in the more formative years when they're learning how to really play, and I get to help them put the polishing touches on before they go out into the whatever the real world is after high school.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. A question that I have: what approaches have you used or would like to try to help students maintain focus and minimize distractions during practice and performance? Because we all know what the biggest distraction is now.
Phones.
Yep. Our school has taken on the principle of no phones during class.
Yes. So one of the issues though that I'm currently combating is Chromebooks. And so before every class period I have to lock the internet so that way they're not messing around on their Chromebook.
That's
and they get sneaky. They'll like put it right next to their backpack and like be playing a game on the side while they're like supposed to be playing. So I have to like lock the internet. Sometimes I have to confiscate their Chromebook, but it's not even phones anymore. It's like the one-on-one thing they have to deal with.
Yeah, that's even in a rehearsal.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. Like today I was totally derailed because I had like 5 kids who just kept deciding to be playing games with each other. So I paused the internet, I grabbed their Chromebooks, and then we moved on with our day. But I was like, guys, we go through this every week. You know better.
Do you let them have anything next to them when they're rehearsing?
So I don't really have the space for them to leave their backpacks off to the side just because. Yeah, so like they'll bring their bags and stuff, but I sometimes use the practice rooms for like breakout sectionals or something. So I can't really just throw them all in a practice room. But man, I personally don't think that they should even have their backpacks because we used to have that at the middle school where they were forced to use a locker and they weren't allowed to bring anything to class. But since COVID, they've had backpacks, and so now it's just kind of like an annoyance.
Maybe
I need to figure out because other classes will.
Have you talked to Jeff about this or a staff meeting?
I talked to Aaron Drake about it, and he said, "Yeah, we're probably never going to go back to requiring that." So I'm like, "Awesome. Well, I guess we'll just deal with it."
Well, you could require all your students to put their Chromebooks in a certain place when they come into the room.
Yeah.
Like a charging dock or something?
I definitely want to. Yeah, I've been.
Can you get a
Because
cart?
we don't even have charging docks in our classrooms. They have everything checked out to them. So I might just have them, like, I might make a printout that says out of sight in your backpack, or I take it and put it on my desk. So that way everyone is just aware that that's the rule.
And you don't start rehearsal until every Chromebook is accounted for.
Yeah.
We have the little boxes in all of our classrooms, and some people go as far as taking attendance with the phones. If your phone's not in your little slide, then you're not present that day. But I don't have a phone. Well, bullshit. Check your pocket.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Because they do.
So that's one that I need to work on minimizing for them, because I mean, they don't have their phone or their Chromebook at the concert. So I'm like, we're training towards that skill. You need to get rid of it. So
yeah, I mean, I'm just as guilty when I'm in symphony rehearsal. If I've got 308 measures of rest, I'm back there playing a game or doing my crossword puzzle or whatever. All the trumpet trombone players are back there watching the game.
Yeah,
but it's different because we're not students, and you don't miss entrances.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Hopefully,
theoretically.
Yeah. So at that level, I think minimizing distractions, that's a physical thing that we have to consider. How do we remove that physical distraction? On another level, I talk to my students sometimes about focusing on what's here and now in front of you. I use driving as an example a lot, because if you don't pay attention to what's right in front of you right now, you could die. We passed a really bad accident today on 15th Street. It looked like somebody was texting.
I drove by that one too.
Yeah, it was nasty. There was blood all over the driver's door.
Yeah.
It was definitely an airbag went off. But if you're not paying attention to what's going on here and now, right now. So, I mean, you've heard me say it before, forget what you did last period. Don't worry about what you have next period. Focus on this right now, because that's literally the only thing that needs to be going on in your brain. Focus and concentrate, and then you can get through this. And I'm only asking for like 2 to 3 minutes, because that's as long as each piece is. And by the time I get them,
sometimes when I can see they're just sometimes when they're like super distracted, I make them count my gesture. So I'll be like, okay, your only job is to focus on gesture like beat 1. So when I get to beat 1, you say it out loud. And then we like go through a couple of those to kind of like bring them back into the focus. And that kind of helps a little bit, but that's at least the mental distraction from, because they're so social and they want to like talk all the time. And so
and that's the middle school brain.
Yeah.
The high school brain just is the same, but they have more hormones.
Yeah. Right.
What do you think about the elementary students?
They're pretty distracted basically all the time. And I feel like it's having more and more of an effect on me anymore. Like when they are just way off task, it makes me lose my focus. And so the thing I do to keep them on task more than anything else is I just say, okay, we're starting this piece. 1, 2, ready, go. And then anytime somebody's playing, they all want to play. So that's what I've been doing lately. I don't know. Like we don't have elementary is just kind of a distracting place. Like there's always people walking by in the hallways, like classes moving, kids going to the bathroom, teachers. I mean, like if I'm in the gym or the cafeteria, other people are coming and going. Like it's not like I have my own dedicated classroom. So there's just kind of distractions all the time.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So when they get to
Also
the middle
think
school level, then you get to help them learn to focus a little bit more. And by the time I get them, I mean most high school kids, they know when it's time to turn it on and be serious, they can do it.
Yeah, and especially we as teachers, I mean, we do a really good job with our intentional planning. So like when we're working with that domain, as long as we have like a rehearsal goal and we like maybe I don't know if you switch from having it posted on the board to having like a PowerPoint or something, like I found that as soon as I
I
started
read it
like
all.
deliberately planning everything they need, yeah, I was like that has helped a lot too because they'll like see what needs to go. If anything, like if I get distracted, they'll be like, "Oh, Mr. Madrid, you forgot to. We were supposed to play XYZ. We should do that." And I'm like, "Oh, you're right. We should do that." And then there's sometimes, of course, I'll have to be like, "Oh, well, I have to skip because that drum fell apart halfway through, and so we literally need to go fix that drum." So
Yeah, I mean, I always say you got to have a plan. You got to have a starting point, and you also have to be willing to throw that out the window and go with the teachable moment.
exactly.
Because the teachable moment might take 20 minutes of your class time and might be the most important thing you do that month.
Yes.
You know, like, why do you have to take your read off every time? Is it really that important? Well, when they're black on the inside, yes, it really is. So
It's pretty
Probably
important.
do that. Yeah. I'm
why should
almost
you not
finding I have like 5
build
different
the
sets
strings
of
on your
conversations.
viola?
I like rotate through them so that the kids can hear it.
Nice.
Yeah, we had an issue today where I had checked out a viola to the wrong kid, and so Carson ended up using Andrew's old viola. Hasn't been played in at least a year, and all 4 strings were really loose. I'm like, you can't do that. You have to, you can tune them down, but don't take them all the way off because your sound post can fall. And so it took her most of the class period to get it back up into tune. And still, it's it's not as good quality as the other ones that they're all playing on. So it is what it is. But that's his old Elmer.
Yeah.
Look.
And then also, it's kind of like they get distracted if something is slightly off. So I'm like, okay, well, you just gotta like, there's a little grit. You can ignore that. Like, it's not as perfect as you want it. Like, sometimes we just gotta will it to happen, and then we'll loop back to it.
Something I did today for our concert march for our younger band. I just kicked it off and just sat there, made them do it with no conductor. And then I had them do it again, and I left, and I went over and played marimba.
Oh, that's perfect.
No conductor. And they were great. They were concentrating and focused, and they did not lose time.
Cool.
It was actually, I think it was a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to do that to them at large group. I'm going to count it off and then walk off stage. I'll do it at our concert too.
That's cool.
I'm not going to do it without telling them. They're coming along. I've got a lot of really good freshman group this year.
Cool.
That's good.
Okay. Let's move on to our second section, managing performance anxiety. Understanding how one's judgmental tendencies can create performance anxiety and techniques to help overcome this. So here's the synopsis. Letting go is essential for achieving peak performance. Green explains that tension and overthinking can stifle musical expression, whereas surrendering to the flow of music allows for greater creativity and freedom. He uses the examples of elite musicians who play with ease because they have learned to trust and release control. The chapter provides exercises for letting go of physical tension, mental stress, and emotional resistance. Green emphasizes that musicians must cultivate a mindset where they accept imperfections and embrace spontaneity. By relinquishing excessive control, performers can achieve a state of effortless mastery. It's a good goal. The thing that I worked on in college a lot with Dave Turnbull, analysis produces paralysis. We got into that. I got into that big time. I would overanalyze my playing to the point where I couldn't do it. So it was more a mind game, getting ready for my graduate recital. And, you get all hung up on one stupid little detail, and then you're stuck and you can't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
So the question is, how does performance anxiety impact your students, and what strategies from the book could you incorporate to help reduce it?
This is where me listening to it, I feel, is a big detriment, because as I was listening, I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. And where I would usually underline it if I was reading it, in paper form, I was just like, oh yeah, I should remember that. And then of course, I can't remember. I don't really feel like these would work very well with my 5th graders, but I feel like they'd work very well with my private students for playing solos or orchestra music of any kind.
Well, then it's applicable.
Yeah.
Totally.
Just the idea of, instead of focusing on playing perfectly, choose something else to focus on so that you're not sabotaging yourself. The whole idea about focusing on the shaky bow, I'd really like to try that. The shaky hands.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when she talked about, because I'm also listening to it, but when she was talking about some of those scenarios and then the exercises that you could do to do it, it was all about almost expanding your attention. So trying to figure out what you're hyper fixating on, and then just moving away from that. And so at least with my students, I know when I do my playing checks, or my playing tests as I previously called them, they're really nervous about playing in front of the whole class, and that's just because they don't want to embarrass themselves. So
Sure.
then when I kind of have changed how I present it, I almost don't give them an opportunity to overthink it. I just say go, 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 or I'll even have sections play it, and the violas can play it 5 different times, so that way they're all not thinking about themselves, but I get to go around and hear them play, and give
That's
viola
smart.
1, I'll focus on you and see how you're playing. Okay, viola 3, this is what you're doing. And so that way it kind of gets them out of that. I don't want my peers to make fun of me or anything like that. It's just it's go time kind of a thing. And so I like that. And then she also mentioned about having a practice log. And it was kind of nice because I actually, when I was in school, I did a performance log for myself just so I can just keep track of where I was spending my time, and if I needed to go back and change something, that'd be good. I almost want to do a rehearsal log for myself, just to be hey, this is what you did with the students. You spent a lot of time focusing on this, and then even if not that kids ever do this, but if they say, oh wait, you've never told us the word articulation, I could go back in my journal and be no, we literally spent 10 minutes as an entry task talking about how we start notes on our instruments. So we should probably know what this is.
Yeah, they just don't remember. They can't remember what they ate for breakfast most of the time.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Along those lines, something he talks about this a lot in the book. He writes about this, the whole capital P equals small p plus I, or whatever the formula is. I forget.
Yeah.
The way I understand it, it's basically letting your body do what it naturally wants to do and getting your mind out of the way. So a way that I worked on that myself every morning in graduate school, especially, I had an hour and a half to 2 hour warm up routine, and I would read a book while I did it, because it was just Clark exercises and just, scales and scales and scales and scales and warm ups and slurs and all this stuff. And it was just a pattern. but I read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance while I was running all that.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't think about it. And then over time, your body just naturally does it. I don't have to think about how to play an A flat
Yeah.
major scale because I've done it 10,000 times and it's a habit. And then in lessons, sometimes Turnbull would like grab a random magazine and he would say, okay, play this passage from your solo.
Bless
Play this passage from your solo, but read this paragraph. And then I want you to tell me what the paragraph was about. Because I had most of my stuff memorized at this point. So I would play, the first part of my solo and read a part of the magazine article, and then he'd say, okay, how did you play? Like, well, I wasn't thinking about it. It's like, yeah, you sounded great. What was the what did you read in the article? And I'd have to tell him. And then later on, we got to the point where I had to tell him verbatim, like, read it exactly and recite it back to me exactly while you're playing this other thing. I mean, that way you have to internalize and know the music so well that that's off the table. And then you can just let your body naturally do. And when you get into more upper level playing, it's all about the nitpicky stuff.
Yeah.
But getting your brain around that and letting your body naturally do what it does, that's pretty cool. Applying that to an ensemble rehearsal is a little trickier. I don't think I could use that particular technique, but there's other stuff in the book that you could definitely use. Oh, John, yeah, you weren't in our first meeting when I was in high school, my sophomore year. Barry Green, the guy that wrote this book, he was our guest speaker at Allstate Band.
That's awesome.
That was so cool. And we got to see him do the thing with the tennis ball where he kept throwing the tennis ball at this girl and she would just catch it and not think about it. It's like, you didn't have to think about that. You just naturally did it. Just back and forth. That's inner game of tennis stuff. But then, applying the same thing to playing your instrument, you just naturally do it because you have put in time first.
Yep.
So that's something I try every once in a while with students, just as an example. I'll like toss them a bottle of olive oil or whatever, and they catch it, or throw a pencil at them, and they'll just protect their face.
Yeah.
But it's the same concept. Your body's going to do what it naturally wants to do, and just get your head out of the way, let it happen. And since we're getting ready for large group, that's a kind of a good time to do it.
Right now, I did something today where it was kind of I have this entrance that my violin ones keep rushing like crazy. And so I did this thing where I had half the group counting and keeping a steady pulse while I had like one or two of the students play, and then we'd like add more and more, and then the whole ensemble played. So that kind of feels like tricking them into like not thinking about it. But I think that's something that could work for me, is just like keep putting them in scenarios where they get the desired goal, and then as soon as they put it back to playing, they have that. And so that's kind of nice. I even had a couple of students start to pick up on when they were making those mistakes that we were trying to correct, and so they would like stop and like fix it. And so I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool that I'm not the one telling you, you're having your classmates now be able to pick up on it. So
that's great. And then you have them switch roles, like you play and you clap, and then you switch.
Yeah.
Clap and you play, and yeah, that's a good idea, because then they get to be the timekeepers.
Oh yeah.
Very smart.
And then I even did that with I had my sixth graders. They're practicing their chromatic scale because we finished B flat major. We're gonna go to E flat eventually before the end of the year. And so now I'm like, okay, well, we should know the notes in between. And so I had one, like, person A was playing, person B was like pointing at the fingering chart. So I was getting them to see what on their fingering chart they need to follow. So that way when they like switch turns, they can like play it. And so that was kind of nice because I looped back because I taught them how to do it last week, and now I'm just trying to get them to internalize it and memorize it. So, but yeah, just different things where you can kind of get them to be the teacher or like get them to be taking charge of it.
Very cool.
Okay, so have you talked to them about? I mean, we do a lot of performances at the high school. You guys don't do as many, but the talk about nerves. You're performing now. We don't have the same issue that vocalists have because our students, for the most part, have something to hide behind. They have an instrument between them and the audience.
Yeah.
But still, some kids get, so nervous that they can't function.
Yeah.
And I end up having to talk them down sometimes. And I know it's worse when they're younger, but as they get older, it can become more serious and become debilitating. And that's when I bring in the Soprano on Her Head. Have you read that book? That's the best book about.
I haven't.
Yeah, A Soprano on Her Head by Eloise Ristad. That's the best book on anxiety I've ever heard of. But the whole thing about getting up in front of your peers and public speaking and all of that, there's only one way to get better at it, and that's to do it. So the more you perform, the less anxiety you have. I used to get really nervous as a conductor, even with my military band. It would, I had to always project confidence and all of that, but inside, you're shaking in your boots. But nobody else needs to know that.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about that at Solo Ensemble this weekend too.
Yeah.
So what kind of techniques have you come across to use with students, at least?
One thing, it's kind of weird because like in the past, I feel like I talk about it more, and I feel like talking about it stressed them out more. So then I shifted from talking about it to just like being like, oh wait, we're all gonna do this playing check off. Okay, we're just going down the row. Go, go, go. And so I feel like I've essentially kind of tricked some of them to feeling comfortable in those situations. Or like maybe like I said before, like I'll do like small group testing where like they'll play it like 5 times, but I've listened to each one of them at a different time. But I think the anxiety component, especially for some of my girls, they're feeling really nervous. And I always kind of let them know that they're nervous because they care about what they're doing, not because they like don't like it. It's because they want to do well. And so I specifically have sometimes if I can see that they're really upset, I'll like pull them aside and I'll like make sure that they hear from me that like I'm proud of them for like trying it, and then I'll have them give themselves some compliments about it, because that's the best thing is like you have, in order to get better at performing, you have to perform like more. And so those playing checkoffs that I do have been kind of a godsend for me, because ever since I started rolling out those, I don't get kids being super, super nervous. Like you still get nerves every once in a while, but they're just like, all right, this is normal. We've already played the concert like 10 times in class, so let's do this.
Yeah, I use an example from when I was in college. That's why I do so many run-throughs before a performance, because my college band director or top wind ensemble never, ever did a run-through. It drove me nuts because as a brass player, we never knew if we were going to have chops to make it through the last piece. Even a dress rehearsal, right? Like the last rehearsal before a performance, we would never run the whole thing. Like, what is your problem? why don't you do this for us? And it was his philosophy. That's how he did it. And I firmly believe you can learn something from everybody, even if it's what not to do. So I learned to not do that. So I make sure that we at least a week ahead we'll start doing run throughs.
Yep.
And come hell or high water, unless the ceiling actually caves in, we don't stop. And I'll have the clock running so we know how long.
I mean, that's only happened once at a district game, right?
Yeah,
Where the ceiling
that did
fell.
happen. Yeah, we had to move the game over to NIC.
NIC, yeah, that's
Yeah,
so
you
funny.
were, and then we.
But yeah, no,
fan. That was funny.
Yeah. No, it's definitely interesting. I don't know, maybe Christina, you can kind of speak a little bit more about how do you prepare them for their concerts? Because I know they get a little bit nervous about playing in front of people, but I'm the same mentality of Jim, that probably like a week or two before we start what I call performance boot camp, and we just do the run throughs and we'll like do some polishing, but they need to be able to think through it so that way they're prepared.
My biggest thing to help them not have jitters is to help them not be surprised by anything. And so, and I only see him twice a week. So, like, for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks now, the first class of each week, we run through all of our large group music exactly the way we're going to do it when we get there, so that they don't have to worry. They know exactly what order everything's going to be in, the steps I'm going to take before we start every single piece, what my expectations are, all that good stuff. I do it so many times in the goal to have them be very comfortable with what's going to happen. Yeah. That's my goal. And for concerts, it's the same thing. Like, we run it. This is what I'm going to do now. This is when you're going to have time to, like, last second run through it in your head. I just endless repetition with them, just so that they understand. And I talk all the time about, like, I'm not expecting perfect. I make mistakes constantly. Like, they can hear me squeaking on a violin all the time. So, like, perfect isn't our goal here. Our goal is to do our best and have fun doing it. And so I try to, like, downplay the whole, like, scary. No, not scary.
Yeah. I like that you said perfect isn't. It's I forget what you said exactly, but I like how you said that, because I tell students that too. I'm like, our goal is to grow here.
Yeah.
And then they'll, for some reason, every once in a while I'll get a kiddo who will apologize. I'm like, whoa. You should only apologize if you, like, kick me in the shin or something. Like, you playing a wrong note's not a big deal. Like, we're growing. It's totally okay.
Yep.
Yeah, squeaks and squawks. If you don't have those,
Now,
then how are you going to learn?
You're missing the key
Exactly.
signature after we've gone over it.
I tell my private students.
Exactly.
Right.
That's a different thing. Yeah. It's not an optional thing.
Yeah.
I tell my private students all the time that if they didn't make mistakes, I'd be out of a job. So thank you for not having it perfect yet. I need something to talk about.
Yeah, I say that all the time. If we play through the entire piece every day without stopping, then it's perfect and there's nothing to fix. But if we have to stop for any reason whatsoever, we still have work to do.
Yeah.
And that's totally normal. I mean, we all play professionally. We know even professionals make mistakes all the time. It's not a big deal.
Yep.
Totally.
Which is funny, because I mean, especially in the symphonies where they, like, change clefs for me, I always make mistakes, because I'm like, oh, I didn't practice that switch to tenor clef enough. Like, oops, my bad.
So speaking of being non-judgmental, that's the next chapter: goal setting and non-judgmental awareness. The importance of non-judgmental feedback and setting achievable goals. So let's see. Summary: the power of perspective. Green discusses how shifting perspective can transform a musician's approach to challenges. Instead of viewing mistakes as failures, musicians should see them as valuable learning opportunities. It also explores the importance of balancing technical precision with artistic expression. Chapter includes strategies for reframing negative thoughts and adopting a growth mindset. That's a good buzzword. Green encourages musicians to step back and see their progress over time rather than fixating on short-term struggles. A broader perspective helps maintain motivation, resilience, and enjoyment in music. So our question is, what role does goal setting play in your teaching? And how can non-judgmental feedback enhance that process?
I'm not sure how intense your guys' PD is in your buildings, but right now they're kind of having us do assessment and like data gathering, and they're having us try to make a goal of trying an experiment. And so my experiment is I'm trying to get them to go through 3 tasks per rehearsal that they can give themselves feedback on. And so one of those was on setting a goal to improve the piece. And I just kind of left it kind of vague like that. And you give yourself a fist to 5 rating, 0, you didn't master it, 5, you perfected it. And so I've kind of been doing that more, but that was just more intentional. I hadn't really been doing that. Yeah, just like how many fingers, like, hey, how do you think you did on your goal? And some of them will be like, oh, I think I'm a 3. I still want to keep getting better. And sometimes they'll be brave enough I'll ask them, I'll be like, who wants to share? And so I had one kiddo today be like, oh, well, I felt like I've been rushing this passage. And so my goal today was to follow your conducting more. I was like, that is a great goal. Like, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. So
that's
those
nice.
kind of things.
Macro to micro. That's smart.
Yeah.
Very
So
smart.
it's kind of, at least I feel like the only reason I kind of started thinking about that though is because I felt a little bit external pressure from like ELA teachers who are always like doing paperwork or written entry tasks or whatever to like get data. So I'm like, okay, well here's one I can do that's not paperwork, because I don't know, with all the papers we do, it can be really monotonous. But yeah, so that's one thing I do for non-judgmental goal setting.
That's great. Something I do when we'll record ourselves, and then I'll play it back, or I'll put it on Schoology, and they have to watch it and answer questions. And I try to always start with something positive, like what did you do well as an individual? What did the group do well? What can you do to improve as an individual? What can the group do better? So I always try to put the positive spin first. Like even today we did that thing where I stopped conducting and they kept playing. I'm like, okay, tell me how that went. What went well? Okay, now what could go better? And they came up with some really good answers. You can just get out of the way and let them think and use their brains. Sometimes they can surprise you and not be just the knuckle dragging yard apes that most of them want to be.
And sometimes when, I don't know if you notice this, but sometimes when we open it up, it feels like they say it better than I could have told the group. Like their feedback is better than what I would have given.
Said better, yeah.
Especially my drummers to each other, they're actually really productive. They'll be like, "Oh wait, we're playing too loud here. We need to fix that," or something along those lines. And I'm like, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah, I had a kid today. He's a sophomore, thinks he knows how to play everything. He's a drummer. And he was messing around and missing entrances and stuff. And when we got done with the piece, I stopped and I called him out. I'm like, look, you're back there screwing around, missing entrances, causing other people to miss entrances. Keep it up, and I'm going to kick you out of this class. Not just this piece. You're holding the entire group back when you do that. And everybody's looking at him going, yeah, thank you. Because they all hear him talking all the time and all that. And we're like, knock it off. Just stop. Because everybody's
had
there.
The same day.
Yeah, I know.
I had that same conversation with a kid who keeps losing his music. I was like, dude, I printed it 5 times.
You have that one guy that
figure this out.
We have that same guy in my building. He comes in and
Yeah,
steals 30
it's
clarinet
just-
parts all the time.
You
Yeah, and it's so annoying. I feel bad because I'm like, guys, I can. And I kind of ripped into my 8th graders a little bit today, and it wasn't necessary, but I let them know. I was like, hey, I can only do so much to get you where you want to go. The rest has to come from you guys.
Mhm.
Like you have to do the rest. So you have to decide what you're willing to do right now.
100%. You guys, I don't do this sort of thing with my classes, so
Well, you don't really have troubles like we do.
no, but that's okay. I enjoy listening to you two talk about it.
Yeah. So something I think that we could do better is showing the younger kids where they're headed. Like this year, I had Aaron's groups come play on my concerts at the beginning of the year. I'd like to have you do that next year if you're up for it. You know, just have your kids come play 1 or 2 pieces, and maybe we'll combine on something. You know, have your kids play with my kids on my stage, so that they see, oh wow, look at this! Look what I get to go do next year in this big high school. You know,
That'd be great.
It's a lot of fun. You know, and just I think we did orchestra and band, both of them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, this next fall, my first concert is going to be all solos.
Oh, cool.
So I've got
That'd
the clarinet and flute professors from University of Idaho as my guest artists, and we'll do something featuring them and maybe them as a duet also. But then the rest of the whole concert's just going to be students playing solos. And same thing with my orchestras.
That's awesome.
It's going to be all solos.
That's cool.
I haven't talked to anybody about being a guest artist with us yet, but I've got enough performances that I don't think I'll need to. So I might not have an orchestra guest artist next year, but we'll just have all solos because I've got like 7 or 8 kids ready to go. So that'd be kind of fun.
That's perfect.
And then then you get to work with feedback on a different level because you're working with how's the group acting as an accompanist, how's the soloist doing with the group. It's a very different kind of feel.
Yeah.
But I love doing that.
Oh, yeah.
It's super fun.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I want to get like, especially with the string kids, I want to get like a young kid, like 7, 8 years old that can really play something out of the Suzuki books. And we'll accompany them on a solo, and a middle school kid accompany them on a solo, and then the rest will be our high school kids.
Nice.
That's my goal anyway.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Well, we powered through those pretty quick with only 3 of us chatting. That's plenty.
Mostly
We're
2
just
of you.
efficient.
Well, yeah, we are efficient, yes. So the next one we have, the last one, is on April 7, and we'll talk about there's 4 chapters, but really the last chapter is just exercises.
Okay.
So I'll send out the video from this as soon as it's uploaded. I put it on YouTube so that it's easier to share a link rather than send the file.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'll get that going, and then after our next meeting, there's like 1 week, and then you just have to give me a 1-page synopsis of the book and what you think, more than 1 page, and then I turn in all the grades and it's done.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. The first year I did this, I didn't require the paper, and it didn't feel like that was a good idea. So now I have to have a written component, but it's not much. And it was the same thing for the IMEA. If you did any of the IMEA credits from Allstate, it's just a 1-pager. And that's enough. We're busy enough, so I don't want to make it onerous.
Exactly.
All right,
yeah,
then.
I figured I might as well do credits now while I'm also in school. So I'm like,
just
try to cap out as much as I can.
Bump way up on the pay scale fast doing this.
Yep.
Yeah, not that fast.
Alrighty.
Thanks, guys. Get that big dollars. Those big Idaho
all
dollars.
All that money.
Money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know who I
Alrighty.
voted for.
See you, team.
Okay,
right, thank you.
bye. Have you turned off the recording?